Hey friends, it's Mauricio. This is episode 23 of Ordinary Heroes. The other day I was reading Proverbs 25 and I came across a verse that I've seen many times before, but this time it stopped me. Not because it was new, but because I realized I had never really understood it. The verse says, if your enemy is hungry, give him food to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you. And if I'm honest, for a long time I misunderstood that. I associated coals of fire on someone's head as almost a well deserved rub it in kind of kindness. Almost like kill them with kindness. Be nice, but in a way that proves a point. But this time, I couldn't just move on. Because lately, in my own life and work, I felt that tension. Moments where I felt, let's just say, not treated fairly. Moments where behind the scenes things didn't line up with what was said face to face. And if I'm being real with you, the desire to defend myself, to respond, even the desire for some form of justice or revenge was there. And it's not easy. It's not easy to be kind when you feel wronged. It is not easy to respond with grace when something in you wants to push back. So instead of reacting, I paused. I prayed about it. And I wanted to understand this verse more deeply. What does it actually mean? What are these coals? Why on somebody's head? And why would God ask us to do this for an enemy? Here's what I learned. First, the instruction is very clear. If your enemy is hungry, feed them. If they're thirsty, give them water. This is not theoretical kindness. This is practical, real, action based. And then he says, in doing this, you will heap coals of fire on his head. And this is where it gets interesting, because those coals of fire are not meant as punishment. They're not revenge. They are the result of kindness, not the goal. So most scholars understand this as a picture of conviction. When someone receives unexpected kindness from a person they have wronged, something happens internally. Their conscience is stirred. There's a kind of discomfort, not because they were attacked, but because they were shown grace they didn't expect. And that can lead to something powerful: reflection, softening, even repentance. In other words, kindness can expose wrongdoing more powerfully than retaliation ever could. The verse also says heap coals. That word matters. It means to pile up, to give generously, to pour out kindness, not just once, but consistently, not measured, not calculated, but freely. And that kind of response forces a moment of truth, not because you're trying to shame someone, but because goodness has a way of revealing what's underneath. And this is important. The goal is not humiliation. The verse is not saying, be kind so that you can make him feel bad. That's still self centered. Instead, the posture is this: our role is to act with integrity and goodness. God's role is to deal with the heart. And the verse ends with, and the Lord will reward you, which shifts everything, because now the focus is no longer what happens to them, but am I walking rightly before God? There's also something beautiful in the cultural picture behind this. In the ancient world, fire wasn't something you can just turn on. If your household fire went out, that was a real problem. People would go to neighbors to borrow burning coals, and those coals were carried in a container, often on the head, back to their home to restart their fire. So imagine this: if someone gave generously, they were not just giving coals, they were helping restore that person's home, their warmth, their ability to cook, their daily life. So heaping coals could also be seen as generous restoration, not harm, help. And this idea is confirmed in the New Testament. Paul repeats this in Romans: if your enemy is hungry, feed him. And then he adds, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. That's the principle. Not avoidance, not weakness, but choosing a different response. And Jesus takes it even further. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. That is not natural. That is not easy, but it's powerful. So, what does that mean for us? It means when we are wronged, we have a choice. We can respond in kind, we can defend, escalate, and continue the cycle, or we can pause and choose something different. We can respond with integrity, with restraint, with kindness, even when it's undeserved. Not to prove a point, not to manipulate an outcome, but because we trust that God sees, that He is just, and that He can do more with our obedience than we can do with our reaction. And I'll be honest, I'm still learning this. This is not something I've mastered. This is something that I'm walking through right now because it's one thing to understand a verse and another thing to live it. But here's what I'm holding on to: kindness is not weakness, it is strength under control. And sometimes the very thing that feels hardest to do is the thing God uses most. So if you are in a season right now where you feel wronged, misunderstood, or even hurt, I want to leave you with this. You don't have to win the moment. You don't have to prove your point. You don't have to respond the way others expect you to. You can choose a different path and trust that God will handle what you cannot see. Because sometimes the kindness you give becomes the very thing God uses to change a heart. Maybe theirs, maybe even yours. Thanks for listening. I'll see you on the next one.